Just ahead on Art Rocks, Ellis Marsalis gets back to basics on making unforgettable music. A painter known worldwide for bringing exotic wildlife close enough to touch. How mosaics make the whole equal more than the sum of its parts. And Billy Cannon still standing strong at LSU after all these years. That's all coming up next on Art Rocks.
Support for this program is provided by Georgia Pacific Port Hudson operations. Like the impulse that drives an artist's creativity, Georgia Pacific's 850 Louisiana employees are driven to produce quality paper products for your home and business. With additional support from the Renaissance Baton Rouge Hotel, centrally located for business and pleasure travel, the Renaissance offers intrigue, style, and southern hospitality. And by the Watermark Baton Rouge. Art, history, and commerce come together in the heart of downtown Baton Rouge at the Watermark, located in the historic Louisiana Trust and Savings Bank building. And by Prescience Point Capital Management, a fact-based private investment manager using forensic investigation to benefit clients. Research with impact. And by Ann Conley Fine Art, with the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
Hello, thank you for joining us for Art Rocks with me, James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine. Today we're with one of jazz's contemporary giants, a man the National Endowment for the Arts has named a master of jazz, Ellis Marsalis. The New Orleans native shares his thoughts on the evolution of music and why he chose the piano over other instruments.
I'm Chris, I'm the sound guy.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
All right.
What do you like to have in your monitor?
Monitor. Technology has a way of changing almost daily. When them guys made this piano, there wasn't no monitors.
Right.
There was none of that. There's nothing that I could hear in a monitor that's going to help this. Technology has sometimes very little to do with the sound of anybody's music. The better the technology, sometimes the better the reproduction. But it has nothing necessarily to do with the intrinsic value of the music.
And it's not often that we're in the presence of jazz royalty, and we are in the presence of jazz royalty. And we have one tonight that hasn't been here since the early 1960s. So please join me in welcoming Ellis Marsalis.
I don't think jazz changed at all. I think it probably evolved. If you listen to Louis Armstrong and Kid Ory and them, it doesn't have the exact same sound. The connecting points has contributed to a slight difference in the overall language. As a result, you get musicians who are influenced by earlier people. It's like I once heard somebody said, the more things change, the more they remain the same. A rose is a rose, by any other name would smell as sweet. My first instrument was a clarinet, and I played the clarinet through undergraduate school. By the time I graduated from the university in New Orleans, clarinet was pretty much out because I didn't want to play traditional music, nor was I ever going to be good enough to audition for a symphony orchestra. All along the way, I had experimented with the piano. The piano was there to work out harmonics and songs, but I was not really serious about the piano. I had to make a decision about how I was going to become a pianist. And I remembered lessons that I had from my second piano teacher. And I started to use them, and I started to practice. and that was it. I don't know that I have been very reflective in how I've contributed to certain types of successes that people look at. Things would fall into place in ways which I never really understood. In the beginning of me having a certain amount of national exposure, if you will, I remember a young lady who was on her high school newspaper. She asking me about my jazz career. In the back of my mind, I was saying, I have a jazz career? And really, I hadn't even thought about it. Saxophone, trumpet, drums, trombone. It's like trying to make a gumbo. You know, I mean, the ingredients dictate how it's going to come out. You know, I don't care who the cook is. I don't think any of the things that we do in the creative sense is natural. You have to work. And as a result of that, you either get better at it or you fool yourself.
Marsalis, another legendary jazz performer with his roots deeply planted in the city of New Orleans. If you don't have any plans for this weekend, you're missing out. So to fill the window in your cultural schedule, here are just a few of the festivals, fairs, exhibits and performances coming soon to spots near you. To learn more about these and other events in Louisiana, pick up a copy of Country Roads magazine. Another resource, the Art Rocks website features every episode of the program, so just log on to lpb.org and follow the prompts. Now here's an artist known worldwide for his exquisite portrayals of exotic wildlife. Stephen Koury makes his home in Florida, but his dedication to understanding the creatures he paints as they exist in the wild takes him all over the world. It's a privilege, Koury says, made possible through the support of his wife. Here's how one artist goes where the wild things are.
This gives them something to see. I guess I realized I was going to be an artist probably about 20 years ago. I never really saw myself doing this. I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player, then I thought I was going to be a college baseball coach, and now I'm going to be an artist, and I love being an artist. It's the best job in the world. I'm my own boss. I get to watch my daughter grow up. I'm home all the time if I want to be. I can take time off and go see her stuff. I'm here for my wife. I get to go to beautiful places in the world and look at critters and then come home and paint. There's really no part of this job I don't like. Welcome to the monkey kitchen, it's okay. My kind of art is realism. So I go see the animals that I paint, I go see the landscapes I paint. You try to experience the thing you're going to paint. And Africa, I'm in Central America, I'm in the US, I'm wherever I'm at, and I think it makes the paintings much better for me. I wrote a book for Northlight Books years back. I did some workshops at New York Botanical Gardens, different places. At that point I realized it's possible to do workshops. You can teach people to paint. Started doing them here at the studio just for fun. Flick little spots. They sit down, they bring their souls in here, and they start. And most people can paint. They really can. We were going gangbusters, we were cranking. Nationally, a magazine book just came out naming me one of the top 60 wildlife artists in the world. I mean, we were doing it that level. And happy and loving life. We decide we want to have a child. And so Sage comes along, and the best art I've ever made. Well, this is Nisha, how vital she was to all of this stuff. She encouraged me to do it. She was always there saying, you can do it. She's done the framing and the website and the planning and the publicity and paying the bills and ordering the stuff and giving me the time to create, giving me the time to paint. So we're in Colorado. She starts feeling numb on the right side of her body. She, over the course of a week, things progress. It gets worse. I take her to the ER. We're in the mountains, so it's a little ER. They say, let's do a CT scan and a blood work there. The girl comes back in after the test comes back and she says, I've ordered life flight. You're going to Denver. And the nurses are like, you need to make funeral arrangements. She's bleeding on the nerve cord. She's going to die. I'm driving back to Crested Butte to get Sage. I'm going to choke up here. And I'm trying to figure out how I tell her Mom's gone. And I decide I'm not going to tell her that. I'm going to tell her I don't know what's wrong. And man, by the time I get to Denver, my phone rings and it's Nisha. And she says, it's stabilized. And I'm like, oh my God, really? Basically, we had no choice. And they do the surgery. And 9 hours later, she comes out. And now it's just rebuild, man. And she's, the last 2 years, it's been a real appreciative thing for me. I had no idea what she did. No idea. You guys are good, doing good. Part of painting is slowing down. I'm not a slow person. I do everything quickly. I have a high energy level. I move a lot. And Nisha's taught me to slow down. And that slowing down, taking our time, making sure we listen instead of moving through what she's gonna say, has made me a better artist. It's made me a better instructor. All along I knew light was important in painting. Any artist worth their salt understands light is what we're really painting. Well, the light coming out of her has made me put more light on my paintings.
Now we're off to Cincinnati, Ohio to meet a couple of college sweethearts who also fell in love with the creative process. John Koverman is a painter who earned his MFA from Miami University in 1977. Marcia left Miami University with not only a BFA in ceramics, but also a husband, John, and a lifelong collaborator. In the years since, the duo have become famous for their intricate mosaics that prove that when it comes to artistic collaborations, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
When somebody asks what we do, generally we say we make tile, and then we say really, really, really little tile. After that, we go on and explain that we started out basically doing production, tile, 12 by 12s and borders. We've recently come into the art end of it. We met as seniors in high school and wound up at college, not intentionally, wound up at the same college, both wound up not intentionally going into art, and that kind of led to the whole thing. Here we are today. So we go to Kinko's tonight?
I think it all stems from, in school she was in ceramics, I was painting, so that's how this comes together. And she knows the clay, and I mean, for what we're doing now, that's pretty important.
Yeah, but it seems like something that people might like. I know it's a little too cliche, or it seems a little too cliche, but I don't know if you could. John's background was in painting, and he is a master at color. The glazes only come in X amount of colors, and his mixes create even more than that.
But in the end, the final image is kind of a collaborative thing. She is just as much a critic as I am, in terms of getting the thing right. Usually, it starts with a drawing, you know, like anything else. Depending on what the image is, most of the faces or intricate pieces, we're gonna go directly from the photograph rather than try to reproduce it ourselves. And we put the image under the plexiglass. The tile will slide on that a lot easier than putting it directly on the paper. The mirror is a function of just getting some distance from your piece, because you can't.
He can take his tile then and slide them around on this piece of plexiglass and look in this mirror that's off to the side, which reflects off of the mirror on the ceiling, and it gives him that distance. It's just a painterly kind of a thing, just using, you know, mixes of tile. Our process is we'll take a block of clay, maybe a bread-sized block of clay. We have a wire cutter that we can take down into that and have various slices. We take that slice, put it on a tin, roll it to the right height. We glaze it wet. Because the clay sticks to the tin, we can then take a wire cutter, whatever size we want, whatever size tile we need, a wire cutter one way and a wire cutter the other way. We trim it up. When it's dry, we can just slide it off of that tin and put it onto the kiln shelf.
One advantage that we have that other people who work in ceramics don't is the tiles are so small that we can glaze it wet, which is a no-no in ceramics. Usually doesn't work, but they're so small that nothing happens, so we can get away with it. What is interesting about this as opposed to painting, though, is painting you generally work from the most general to the most specific, and so you're not making those decisions, those color decisions immediately. This, you really have to start in one spot and kind of build out, and you're on the final level of detail right at the beginning. So you have to make kind of intricate decisions when you don't really even know where it's going. Even though mosaic has been around for, since before history, it's still kind of I don't want to say a lost art.
And I think some of John's pieces become so painterly that they're almost too painterly. So people walk in, don't even understand that it's tile, and a lot of people don't even realize that we make our own tile, which is, surprises them.
But it is interesting, no matter how much it looks like a painting, it's still the tile that people see. I mean, it's still
little tiny tile,
The image is still about the tile, regardless of what the subject matter is.
Ready for another Louisiana Treasure segment? In the Bayou State, you can't mention the name Billy Cannon without seeing the image of the iconic LSU halfback's Halloween run. We got with Cannon's daughter, Bunny, to talk about the statue LSU has erected to solidify Cannon's legacy. She reminded us that while her father was obviously a magnificent athlete, he was also a great family man.
Billy Cannon was a native of Baton Rouge, although he was actually born in Mississippi. He moved to Baton Rouge probably in the 3rd or the 4th grade. His dad found a job at Exxon. At that time, in the 1930s, it was hard to find work. And so he came to LSU and he received an education here at LSU through athletics. He went to Estrema High School and excelled in athletics. It was a means to an end for him because he wanted an education. And he was the second one in his family to get an education. His brother before him also on a scholarship. That is really where his passion lies, is LSU. He played football. He was a running back. He was a halfback. He did kickoff returns. Whatever they needed at the time, he did. He played offense and defense. They were playing Ole Miss here in Tiger Stadium in 1959. Tickets were sold out, and it was Halloween night. and he returned a kickoff return to beat Ole Miss.
Billy Cannon watches it bounce. He takes it on his own 11. He comes back upfield to the 15, stumbles momentarily. He's at the 20, running hard at the 25, gets away from one man to 30, still runs at 25, at the 35 to 25. He's down to 50, he's in the clip, 45 to 20. In the 10 to 5, he scored!
And so they ended up winning that year, but it also sealed their national championship. And then in 1959, he won the Heisman Trophy.
I think after spring practice that year, we had a summer program for the first time that year, and I think you could just see it falling together. And we were getting excellent coaching, we were getting great football players that were coming in, and the players we had here were excellent. We may not have all been as big as everybody else, we may not have been as fast, but the group that I played with, if you were going to beat them, you had to just wear them, slap, where they couldn't get up anymore. They'd give you every ounce that they had.
The thing that's most important, I think, about him was that he was so fast and he was big. And back then, they weren't that big. At Estrema High School, they lifted weights under a man by the name of Alvin Roy, who was the man who started weightlifting. That also lent to his talents on the track field as well. The Hall of Fame committee voted unanimously to have a statue of my dad. He knew that the statue was coming and he was really excited about it. He only wanted two things represented. One was he wanted his teammates represented, and so we have a plaque there for his teammates. And he also did not want to wear a helmet, and so he wanted people to see his face. It's a tremendous source of pride for our family. Number one, because of his accomplishments. Number two, because how much he loved this university. He wanted people just to love this university, embrace it, and give back. When he played in the pros, he played professional football for the AFL for 5 or 6 years, and then the NFL right after that. He played ball in the fall, and then he would go to dental school wherever they gave the classes that he could take in order to go in the spring. So they lived 4 places a year. They'd pack up the kids and move. It took him 14 years to get out of dental school, but he graduated with a dental degree and then an MS in dentistry. He got married as a freshman. He had his first child when he was a sophomore in college. And then by the time he left LSU in December of '59, he had 3 daughters. And then eventually had my brother 2 years later, and then I came 9 years after that.
Now let's see how one Gold Star mother has turned to art to help cope with losing her son in combat. Tina Dracolich says she found a path through grief by transforming her son's army uniform into something symbolic of his life. Now in Reno, Nevada, Dracolich is helping others through the same grieving process. Watch what she's doing for that community.
I remember when I first started to cut David's uniform, I had this shock of, can you do this? Should you do this? You can't uncut it. I can remember feeling I was shaky and my mouth was kind of dry, and I went ahead and cut. And then it went into the beater, and I remember watching these little pieces flow through the water, and there was something renewing about that. Just watching the little pieces just getting sifted and crushed and the fibers being liberated. And then when I made the sheets of paper, that fear and everything just sort of turned into something new that was good, because at that time I was pretty depressed. I am co-founder of David J. Dracolich Foundation for Freedom of Expression, and our vision statement is Art Heals War Wounds. We started working as a foundation as early as 2009 after our son was killed in 2008. We were able to establish the Combat Paper Nevada project. We cut up uniforms or any kind of cloth, cut them into postage stamp sized pieces and put them in the beater.
This is part of uniforms that we cut up and we shred, and we add this to the beater and we beat it. It's a metal wheel and it just beats it. It beats the fibers. That way we don't cut the fibers and the fibers sit back in together and they form paper. And it is very loud.
the fiber becomes so small and kind of forms a slurry with the water that it's mixed with. And we pour that into a vat and sift it out with a mold and decal and form the sheets by crushing them onto a pellon and then drying them.
And that's what it looks like. We do big papers, big flags, colorful flags, cranes, origami. As a veteran, combat paper has opened up friendship doors.
To be able to start to express my personal feelings and views about what I had lived through was so empowering. I realized I had gone through this uniform is a symbol of pain and loss and grief and stuff I don't really agree with sometimes. And this whole out of control thing where all I can do is look at this thing and feel like crying, to where I overcame that by cutting it up and overpowering it. I turned it into something I wanted. And that was a huge turning point for me in my healing process.
And that, as they say in the classics, is that. But keep in mind, you can always watch episodes of the show at lpb.org/artrocks. And meanwhile, Country Roads Magazine makes another great resource for learning what's going on in the arts all across this state. So until next week, I'm James Fox Smith, and thank you for watching.